Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Bakugo was the one born quirkless, and Deku had a strong quirk. Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The world was not built on the premise of equality. That was a lesson Katsuki Bakugo learned at the age of 4, in the sterile, antiseptic silence of a doctor's office, under the hum of fluorescent lights that buzzed like dying flies. It was a Tuesday. The sky outside was a painfully bright cerulean, the kind of day that promised ice cream and playground conquests. Inside, the air smelled of rubbing alcohol and pity. You should probably give it up, kid. The doctor's voice was flat, bored even. He was a man who had delivered this news 100 times before, his empathy worn down to a nub like a pencil used too often. He leaned back in his swivel chair, the leather creaking, and pointed a pen at the X-rays illuminated on the light box. You see this? The doctor asked, tapping the ghostly image of a child's foot. It's a joint in the pinky toe. Usually, by this age, that joint is absent in those who have evolved. It's the primary indicator. Katsuki has it. Mitsuki Bakugo, usually a woman of loud laughter and sharp edges, was strangely quiet. She sat with her hands folded tightly in her lap, her knuckles white. So, that confirms it? There's no mistake? No late bloomer possibility? The records are 99% accurate, Mrs. Bakugo, the doctor sighed, closing the file. He's quirkless. It's rare these days, less than 20% of the population, and almost unheard of in his generation. But it happens. Katsuki sat on the edge of the examination table, his legs dangling, not quite touching the floor. He was clutching his All Might action figure, the limited edition Silver Age version, so hard the plastic ridges were digging into his palm. He didn't look at the X-ray. He looked at the floor tiles. Quirkless. The word didn't sound like a medical diagnosis. It sounded like a hole. It sounded like the absence of color in a painting. Oh, Mitsuki said, her voice cracking just a fraction. She reached out and placed a hand on Katsuki's shoulder. It was meant to be comforting, but it felt heavy. I see. Well, that's fine. We'll be fine. Katsuki didn't cry. That was the first difference. If he were anyone else, perhaps the tears would have come then, hot and stinging. But Katsuki Bakugo did not cry when he was hurt. He got angry. He felt a cold, hard knot form in his stomach, a stone dropping into a well. He looked up at the doctor, his crimson eyes narrowing. So I can't be a hero? The doctor blinked, surprised by the aggression in the toddler's tone. He looked at the boy, really looked at him, and gave a sad, patronizing smile. Well, son, you can be many things. Police officer, firefighter, doctor, but a pro-hero? Without a quirk? It's best to be realistic. Realistic. The drive home was silent. Katsuki stared out the window as the cityscape of Musudafa blurred by. He watched kids running on the sidewalks, some levitating balls, others sprinting with mutant speed. They were part of the world. He was just a spectator. When they got home, Masaru was waiting. The look on Mitsuki's face told him everything. They hugged Katsuki, murmuring soft words about how much they loved him, about how he was still their special boy. Katsuki stood stiffly in their embrace, feeling like he was made of glass that had already shattered, and they were just trying to hold the pieces together. Later that afternoon, he went to the park. He needed to be away from the pity in his house. He needed to hit something. He found him by the sandbox. Izuku Midoriya. Izuku was sitting cross-legged, surrounded by 3 other neighborhood kids. But unlike usual, they weren't ignoring him. They were staring at him with wide, awestruck eyes. Do it again, Izuku! One of them cheered. Izuku looked up, his face splitting into a beaming, gap-toothed smile. Okay. Watch. Izuku took a deep breath. He scrunched up his face, his freckles disappearing into the folds of his expression, and clenched his fists. Vroom. The air suddenly grew hot. A low, thrumming sound vibrated through the playground. From the center of Izuku's chest, a light began to glow. It wasn't the soft flicker of a firefly. It was intense, blindingly white gold, shining through his t-shirt like a miniature star trapped beneath his ribs. The heat rolled off him in a wave, drying the damp sand instantly. Izuku opened his eyes, and they weren't just green anymore, they were glowing with an inner luminescence, trails of golden energy leaking from the corners like tears of light. He raised a hand, and a pulse of concussive force and heat shot out, knocking over a stack of buckets 5 feet away. Whoa! The kids screamed, scrambling back but laughing. That's amazing! It's like All Might but hotter! It's a sun quirk! Another kid shouted. Izuku, you're gonna be the #1 hero for sure. Katsuki stood by the swings, gripping the cold metal chain. The heat from Izuku reached him even there, 30 feet away. It felt like standing in front of an open oven door. Izuku turned, spotting Katsuki. The glow in his chest dimmed but didn't vanish, leaving him radiating a soft, persistent warmth. He scrambled to his feet and ran over, his face filled with innocent excitement. Kaken! Kaken, look! Izuku shouted, pointing at his own chest. It came in. My quirk. Mom calls it solar core. I can stockpile the sun. Isn't it cool? Katsuki stared at him. He looked at the light pulsing beneath Izuku's skin, a heartbeat of pure power. He thought of his own pinky toe. He thought of the doctor's bored voice. Yeah, Katsuki said, his voice quiet, raspy. It's cool. Izuku, oblivious to the nuance, grabbed Katsuki's hand. Izuku's skin was fever-hot to the touch. Now we can be heroes together, Kaken. We'll be the Wonder Duo. All Might won't know what hit him. Katsuki pulled his hand away. He did it slowly, but firmly. Yeah. Together, he lied. The drift didn't happen overnight. It was a slow, agonizing erosion, like a canyon carved by a river over years. By the time they were 7, the dynamic had solidified. Izuku was the sun, bright, gravitational, and impossible to ignore. His quirk grew stronger every day. He could lift boulders by channeling energy into his muscles. He could shoot blasts of pressure that shattered windows. He was the strongest kid in the district, and everyone knew it. Katsuki was the shadow. He was the kid who sat in the back, reading encyclopedias while the others played tag. He realized early on that if he couldn't overpower them, he had to outthink them. The defining moment, the moment the bridge finally burned, happened in the woods near the riverbank. They were following a trail, a group of 5 boys. Izuku was in the lead, naturally. He marched with a confident stride, glowing faintly in the dim forest light, acting as a human lantern. Katsuki brought up the rear, his face set in a scowl. Hey, check out that log! One of the extras shouted. Let's cross. It was a fallen tree bridging a shallow, rocky stream. Izuku hopped onto it first. He walked across with perfect balance, his enhanced physique making it look like child's play. He hopped off on the other side and turned back, grinning. Come on, guys. It's safe. The other boys followed. Then, it was Katsuki's turn. He stepped onto the mossy wood. He was halfway across when his foot slipped on a patch of damp lichen. Katsuki flailed. He didn't have a gyroscope in his inner ear enhanced by solar energy. He didn't have super strength to grip the bark. He tumbled, hitting the shallow water with a splash. He landed hard on his tailbone, the breath knocked out of him. Kaken! Izuku was there in an instant. He didn't just run, he burst forward, a flash of golden light. He leaped from the bank and landed in the water next to Katsuki, the water steaming around his boots from the heat of his quirk. Izuku loomed over him, extending a hand. The sun was behind him, framing his silhouette in a halo of blinding light. He looked like a god descending to the mortal realm. Are you okay? Izuku asked, his eyes wide with worry. Did you hit your head? Can you stand? Here, let me help. Katsuki stared at that hand. It wasn't a hand of friendship. In Katsuki's eyes, it was a hand of charity. It was the strong pitying the weak. It was a confirmation that Katsuki Bakugo was something that needed to be saved. Something inside Katsuki snapped. A wire pulled too tight. He slapped Izuku's hand away. The sound echoed in the quiet forest. Izuku blinked, stunned. Kaken? Katsuki scrambled to his feet, ignoring the pain in his back and the water soaking his shorts. He glared at Izuku, his eyes burning with a mixture of humiliation and fury. I don't need your help, Katsuki spat. I can get up myself. I don't need you looking down on me. Katsuki screamed, his voice cracking. Just because you have that flashbulb quirk doesn't mean you're better than me. Stop looking at me like that. Like what? Izuku asked, genuinely confused. I'm just worried about you. That. Katsuki pointed a shaking finger at him. That look. Like I'm some bug you have to keep from getting squashed. I don't need your pity, Deku. Izuku flinched. The nickname. Katsuki had started using it recently. He claimed it was short for Dikairu, you can do it, but the way he said it, it always sounded like an accusation. You can do it. You can do everything. You have everything. I'm going home, Katsuki muttered. He waded out of the stream, shivering not from the cold, but from the rage boiling in his blood. He didn't look back. That was the day the friendship died. And the rivalry began, 10 years later. Aldera Junior High. The classroom smelled of chalk dust and teenage hormones. The teacher, a man with a hairline receding faster than his patience, slammed a stack of papers onto his podium. Since you're all third years, it's time to think seriously about your future, he announced. I would pass out these career aptitude forms, but he snatched the papers up and threw them into the air, letting them rain down like confetti. Why bother? I know you all want to go into the hero course. The class erupted. 30 students leaped from their seats, activating their quirks. Hands turned into rocks, eyes extended on stalks, minor telekinesis sent pencils floating. It was a riot of mediocrity. Yes, you all have wonderful quirks, the teacher said, waving them down. But remember, it's against the law to use them in school. He picked up a clipboard, scanning the list. Oh, right. Speaking of the hero course. Midoriya, you're aiming for UA High, aren't you? The room went silent. Then, a collective murmur of awe swept through the class. UA? The national school? Well, obviously. It's Midoriya. He's practically a pro already. Izuku Midoriya sat near the window. He didn't jump up or cheer. He simply leaned back in his chair, a relaxed, confident smile on his face. He had filled out since childhood. His uniform was tight around the shoulders, his muscles dense and compact. He radiated a constant, subconscious warmth that made the students sitting near him sweat. Yeah, Izuku said, his voice easy and baritone. I'm going for it. It's the only place that makes sense. He'll crush the entrance exam, one student whispered. I heard he bench pressed a truck last week. The teacher nodded, pleased. With your grades and that solar core of yours, you're a shoo-in, Midoriya. You might even break All Might's records. Izuku chuckled, rubbing the back of his neck. I'm just trying to do my best, sensei. Oh, the teacher added, glancing further down the list. His tone shifted. It became drier, laced with a hint of amusement. And, Bakugo, you signed up for UA too? The silence that followed was different. It wasn't all. It was awkwardness. Heavy, suffocating awkwardness. Katsuki Bakugo sat in the back corner. He kept his head down, staring at the notebook on his desk. He could feel the eyes turning toward him. The pity. The mockery. Bakugo? A student snickered. But he's quirkless. How can you be a hero without a quirk? Maybe he's applying for the General Studies department? No, he wrote hero course right there. Dude, that's just sad. Katsuki's hand gripped his mechanical pencil so hard the plastic barrel snapped with a sharp crack. He stood up. The laughter died down instantly. Katsuki wasn't big like Izuku. He was lean, wiry, composed of sharp angles and intense, vibrating energy. But his face was a mask of pure murder. They got rid of that rule, Katsuki said, his voice low but cutting through the room like a serrated knife. UA removed the quirk restriction 2 years ago. Anyone can apply. Well, sure, anyone can, the teacher said, sweating slightly under Katsuki's glare. But there's never been a precedent. The practical exam is brutal, Bakugo. Without a quirk. I didn't ask for your opinion on the statistics, Katsuki interrupted. I aced the mock exams. I have the highest GPA in the school, second only to him. He jerked a thumb toward Izuku without looking at him. I don't need magic tricks to be better than you extras. Hey! A student with rock fingers shouted, slamming his hand on his desk. Who are you calling extras, you quirkless reject? You think you're better than us just because you study hard? You're delusional. Yeah. Get real, Bakugo. Katsuki turned to the shouter. His eyes were cold. I am real. You guys are just noisy background characters in a story about people who actually matter. Sit down before you embarrass yourself. Why you? Settle down. The teacher shouted. Bakugo, sit down. Stop antagonizing the class. Katsuki scoffed and dropped back into his seat. He looked out the window, ignoring the whispers that started up again. Delusional. Reject. Quirkless. He tuned them out. He opened his notebook. It wasn't class notes. It was a schematic for a high-density pressurized gauntlet. If he couldn't shoot fire, he would build something that could. Across the room, Izuku was looking at him. Izuku wasn't laughing. He looked sad. He looked concerned. That look. That damned look. Katsuki stared back, mouthing a single word. Don't. Izuku looked away. Class ended, and the students filtered out. Katsuki packed his bags slowly, waiting for the herd to thin. He wanted to avoid the rush. He wanted to avoid him. He picked up his notebook, Hero Analysis for the Future, Volume 13. It contained detailed breakdowns of every top hero's fighting style, weaknesses, and equipment. It also contained his own training regimen and weapon designs. As he moved to put it in his bag, a hand snatched it away. What's this? It was the Rockfingers kid from earlier, flanked by two lackeys. He held the notebook up, flipping through the pages. Hero Analysis? Dude, you're still doing this? The bully laughed. This is creepy, Bakugo. You're stalking heroes? Give it back, Katsuki said, his voice flat. He shifted his stance, weight on the balls of his feet. He calculated the distance. 3 targets. One had a hardening quirk, the other possessed extendable fingers, the third had smoke breath. Or what? The bully sneered. You gonna calculate me to death? Look at this drawing. A gauntlet? What, you gonna build toys to fight villains? He raised his hand, his fingers hardening into stone. You know what? I'm doing you a favor. You need to wake up from this dream before you get killed. He prepared to crush the notebook between his rock palms. Boom! A shockwave of heat slammed into the group. The bully yelped, dropping the notebook as the air temperature spiked by 30 degrees in a second. Izuku Midoriya stood in the doorway. He wasn't smiling. His eyes were glowing that eerie gold, and his hair seemed to float slightly, lifted by the updraft of his own power. Give it back, Tsubasa, Izuku said. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried a weight that made the windows rattle. The bullies froze. You didn't mess with Midoriya. He was the ace. He was untouchable. We were just messing around, Izuku, Tsubasa stammered, backing away. Just teaching the Quirkless kid a lesson. He didn't ask for a lesson, Izuku said, walking forward. The floorboards creaked under his boots. He picked up the notebook, dusted it off gently, and held it out. The bullies scrambled out of the room, muttering apologies, terrified of the heat coming off the golden boy. Silence descended on the classroom. Just the two of them. Katsuki looked at the notebook in Izuku's hand. He didn't take it. I had them, Katsuki said through gritted teeth. I know, Izuku said softly. But it's not worth getting suspended over a kaken. You need a clean record for UA. Don't tell me what I need. Katsuki snatched the book. Izuku sighed, the glow fading from his eyes. He leaned against the desk, crossing his massive arms. They're idiots, kaken. Don't listen to them. I don't. Good. Izuku smiled, but it was that soft, condescending smile again. The one that made Katsuki want to scream. You know. I was thinking. About what the doctor said. Years ago. Katsuki stiffened. What? If UA doesn't work out. Izuku started, treading carefully. You're really smart. Like genius smart. Have you thought about UA's support course? Or maybe the police force? You could be a detective. You'd be great at solving crimes. Katsuki felt the blood rushing to his ears. It was happening again. The management of expectations. The gentle steering away from the cliff. I'm applying to the hero course, Katsuki said. I know, but it's dangerous, Izuku said, stepping closer. Without a quirk, If a villain attacks, you can't defend yourself. I don't want you to get hurt. I don't want to see you die because you were trying to do something you weren't built for. Built for? Katsuki laughed, a harsh, barking sound. You think because you won the genetic lottery, you were built for this? You think that power makes you a hero? It helps, Izuku argued. It's reality, Kaken. Men aren't created equal. I can punch through steel. You're human. Just normal. It's not an insult, it's just physics. Physics, Katsuki repeated. He shoved the notebook into his bag and zipped it shut. You know what, Deku? You're right. Men aren't created equal. Some are given everything and never have to work for a damn thing. And some have to fight for every inch of ground they stand on. He shouldered his bag and walked toward the door. As he passed Izuku, he stopped. You think you're the main character, Katsuki whispered. But you're just a battery with a complex. I'm going to UA. And I'm going to pass. And when I do, I'm going to show you and everyone else that power isn't a gift. It's a crutch. Kaken, wait, don't follow me. Katsuki walked out. He left the sun behind him. He walked home the long way. He needed to burn off the adrenaline. His mind was racing, replaying the conversation. Police force. Support course. Detective. Alternative ways to be useful. Consolation prizes for the broken toy. He hated it. He hated the logic of it, because deep down, he knew Izuku was right about the danger. But he couldn't accept it. To accept it was to accept that his life was defined by a missing joint in his toe. He walked through a pedestrian tunnel, the shadows cooling his skin. He kicked an empty soda bottle, sending it clattering against the concrete wall. A hero. He muttered to himself. I'll show them. He thought about his training. Every morning at 4 a.m. 5-mile run. Calisthenics. Martial arts practice at the dojo downtown where he was the only kid fighting adults. Studying mechanics, chemistry, strategy. He had turned his body into a weapon. He knew 108 ways to incapacitate a man. He knew how to make flashbangs from household chemicals. Was that nothing? Was all that effort worth less than Izuku's accidental biology? Squelch. The sound came from the manhole cover behind him. Katsuki stopped. He spun around, dropping into a combat stance instinctively. A massive, fluid shape oozed out of the grate. It was sludge. A living, sentient pile of muck with roving, manic eyes and a jagged maw of teeth. A medium-sized skin suit. The villain rasped, his voice bubbling like a swamp. Perfect. Katsuki's eyes widened. A villain. Here. Now, don't move, kid, the sludge monster hissed, lunging forward. It'll only hurt for 45 seconds. Katsuki didn't freeze. His brain engaged. Liquid body. Physical strikes useless. Need to target the eyes or solidify the fluid. No freezing agents on hand. No fire. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a modified taser, a project from science class he juiced up. Get back! Katsuki shouted. The villain laughed. A toy? Katsuki dodged the first tendril of slime, rolling to the side. He was fast. Faster than the villain expected. He lunged in, jamming the taser into the sludge mass and pulling the trigger. Zack! Electricity arced. The villain shrieked, recoiling. You little brat! But it wasn't enough. The sludge had no nervous system to overload. The taser only annoyed him. A massive wave of slime crashed down on Katsuki. He tried to jump, but it caught his leg. It was heavy, suffocating. It dragged him in. Gotcha! The slime rushed into his mouth and nose. It tasted like sewage and tar. Katsuki gagged, clawing at the liquid. His fingers found no purchase. He couldn't breathe. I'm going to die. The thought flashed across his mind. Dying in a sewer tunnel. Killed by a pile of mud. Pathetic. Deku was right. No, he kicked. He thrashed. He managed to get one hand free. He clawed at the villain's eye. Quit squirming! The villain roared. Katsuki's vision began to blur. Black spots danced in his eyes. His lungs burned. Is this it? Is this where my story ends? Not yet. Not like this. Then, the tunnel shook. Have no fear, a voice boomed from the tunnel entrance. A familiar catchphrase. But it wasn't the voice Katsuki expected. It wasn't the deep, booming laugh of All Might. Because I am here. Boom. A blast of heat hit the tunnel, evaporating the moisture on the walls instantly. The air pressure spiked. Solar impact. A beam of concentrated light and force tore through the darkness. It struck the sludge villain with surgical precision, avoiding Katsuki by inches. The villain didn't just get hit, he exploded. The force scattered the sludge in 1,000 directions, splattering against the walls and ceiling. Katsuki fell to the ground, coughing violently, hacking up black goo. He gasped for air, his throat raw. He looked up. Standing at the entrance of the tunnel, illuminated by the fading glow of his own attack, was Izuku Midoriya. He held a plastic shopping bag in one hand. He looked terrified, but his fist was still smoking. Kaken! Izuku dropped the bag and ran over. Oh my god, are you okay? I saw the sludge guy running from the market, and Katsuki wiped the slime from his mouth. He stared at Izuku. He had been saved. Again, by the same person. Again. Izuku reached out a hand. Can you stand? Katsuki stared at the hand. The same hand from the river. The hand that held the sun. He slapped it away. I had him, Katsuki wheezed, his voice broken. He struggled to his knees, trembling. I had a plan. Kaken, you were suffocating. I calculated the trajectory. Katsuki screamed, tears of frustration finally pricking his eyes. He stood up, swaying. I didn't ask for your help. Why do you always have to show up? Why can't you just leave me alone? Izuku looked hurt. I moved without thinking. My body just did it. Before Katsuki could retort, a shadow fell over them. Impressive. Both boys turned. Emerging from the sewer grate, steaming slightly, was a massive figure. But it wasn't the villain. It was All Might. Or at least it was. The figure coughed, and in a puff of smoke, deflated. The muscle vanished, replaced by a skeletal, gaunt man with sunken eyes and blood trickling from his mouth. All Might? Izuku gasped. Katsuki blinked. The symbol of peace looked like a walking corpse. The skeletal man wiped his mouth. He looked at the splattered remains of the villain, then at Izuku, and finally, his gaze settled on Katsuki. He looked at the taser on the ground. He looked at the claw marks on the villain's eyebits. He saw the fire in Katsuki's eyes, not a quirk, but a spirit that refused to be extinguished. Young man, the skeleton said, pointing a bony finger not at the boy who glowed like a god, but at the boy who was covered in mud. You, with the taser. You moved, didn't you? Before anyone else? Katsuki froze. What? All Might stepped past Izuku, who stood confused, radiating power. All Might stood in front of the Quirkless boy. Most people would have frozen. Or run. But you fought back against impossible odds. All Might's blue eyes burned with intensity. Tell me, boy. Do you want to be a hero? Katsuki looked at the greatest hero in the world. Then he looked at Izuku, the boy born with everything. Katsuki clenched his fists until his nails bit into his palms. More than anything, Katsuki said. I want to win. All Might smiled. It was a terrifying, manic grin. Good. Then we need to talk. Izuku stood in the background, the light of his quirk fading in the cool tunnel air, realizing for the first time in his life, he wasn't the one being looked at. The drift was complete. And the course of history had just changed direction. The silence in the tunnel was heavier than the humid air. The remnants of the sludge villain were splattered across the concrete walls like abstract art painted in sewage, dripping slowly to the floor with wet, slapping sounds. Katsuki Bakugo stood frozen, his chest heaving, staring at the skeletal figure before him. A moment ago, this man had been a titan. He had been the Colossus of Peace, the smiling god that every child in Japan drew in crayon before they could write their own names. Now, he looked like a gust of wind could knock him over. His eyes were sunken deep into bruised sockets, his limbs were stick-thin, and blood, bright, alarming red, dribbled from his chin. All Might? Izuku Midoriya's voice was small, trembling. The golden glow of his solar core had faded completely, leaving the tunnel in dim shadow. For once, the sun boy looked unsure. What happened to you? You, deflated. The skeletal man sighed, a sound like dry leaves scraping together. He slumped, sitting down on the concrete curb of the walkway. Deflated, that's an apt way to put it. He lifted his shirt. Katsuki flinched. He had seen injuries before. He had studied medical textbooks to understand anatomy for combat. But this was carnage. A spider web of scar tissue, purple and knotted, covered the left side of the man's torso. It looked as if a chunk of his body had been gouged out by a giant scoop. 5 years ago, All Might rasped, tracing the scar. I got into a fight with a villain. It didn't make the news. I made sure of that. Half my respiratory organs were destroyed. I lost my entire stomach. I've undergone repeated surgeries just to look like a human being. Katsuki's mind began to race, the shock giving way to his natural analytical instinct. Respiratory damage. Stomach removal. That explains the lack of muscle mass maintenance. His body is cannibalizing itself to maintain the hero form. The time limit must be severe. I can only do hero work for about 3 hours a day now, All Might continued, dropping his shirt. The rest of the time, I look like this. 5 years ago? Izuku stepped forward, his brow furrowed. Was that the fight with Toxic Chainsaw? You know your stuff, All Might chuckled weakly. But no. That punk couldn't scratch me. This was something else. Someone else. The hero looked up, his gaze intense. I am the symbol of peace. People believe I am undefeatable. They believe I smile because I have no fear. But I smile to hide the fear. I smile to trick the pressure of this job, and the terror inside me. He looked at the two boys. Pro heroes must always risk their lives. That is the job. So I cannot simply tell you good job and send you on your way without a warning. You cannot talk about this. He began to scrape the sludge villain into 2 empty soda bottles he pulled from his cargo pants. If the world learns that the symbol of peace is falling apart, the villains will rise. Fear will return. Katsuki watched him work. It was pathetic in a way. The greatest hero, cleaning up slime with garbage. But there was a dignity to it, too. A stubborn refusal to stop. Hey, Katsuki said. His voice was rough, his throat still burning from the sludge. All Might paused, screwing the cap onto the bottle. Yes? Why did you save me? Katsuki asked. He pointed a trembling finger at Izuku. He blasted the guy. You didn't do anything but catch the pieces. Why did you ask me if I wanted to be a hero? All Might stood up, pocketing the bottles. He looked at Katsuki, really looked at him. He saw the grime on his face, the taser still clutched in his hand, the fierce, defensive posture. Because, young man, All Might said softly. You didn't wait for a hero. You tried to be one. He didn't elaborate. He didn't make an offer. He simply gave a nod, turned, and leaped away, though his jump was far less impressive than his usual bounding strides. He vanished over the tunnel exit, leaving the two boys alone. The silence returned. Izuku turned to Katsuki. He opened his mouth, likely to offer comfort, or to ask if Katsuki was hurt, or to say something impossibly kind that would make Katsuki want to vomit. Don't, Katsuki snapped. He shoved his taser into his pocket, and walked past Izuku, shouldering him aside. Don't say a word, Deku. Cack in your throat. I'm fine. Katsuki walked out of the tunnel and into the blinding afternoon sun. He needed to get away. He needed to think. The walk home was a blur of anger. Katsuki didn't go straight to his house. He couldn't face his mother's loud worrying or his father's quiet concern. He wandered the streets of Muzurifu, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. He replayed the events in the tunnel over and over. I failed. That was the conclusion. No matter how he spun it, he had been caught. He had been overpowered. His taser had been insufficient. His strategy had been sound, target the eyes, disrupt the cohesion, but he lacked the firepower to execute it. And then he had arrived. Katsuki kicked an empty can into an alleyway. Solar impact. A quirk that could change the weather. A quirk that made All Might look at Izuku with that familiar awe everyone had. But All Might had spoken to Katsuki. You tried to be one. Words are cheap, Katsuki muttered to himself, turning a corner into the shopping district. Results are what matter. And the result is that I was choking on mud while the golden boy shined." He stopped. The air in the shopping district felt strange. Tense. People were running. Not the casual jog of commuters, but the frantic sprinting of a crowd fleeing danger. Sirens wailed in the distance, getting louder. Smoke, thick, black, acrid smoke, was rising into the sky just a few blocks over. A villain? Katsuki thought. Stay away. You don't have a license. You don't have a quirk. You just almost died. His feet moved on their own. He ran toward the smoke. When he arrived at the intersection, the scene was chaos. Fire was everywhere. It wasn't just burning buildings. The street itself seemed to be ablaze. Cars were overturned, glass shattered across the pavement like diamonds, and in the center of the inferno, rising like a demon from a nightmare, was the sludge villain. Katsuki's blood ran cold. How? All Might had him. He bottled him. Then he saw it. On the ground, near a pile of debris, lay 2 crushed soda bottles. They must have fallen out of All Might's pocket when he jumped. Where is he? The sludge villain roared, his voice amplified by his size. He had absorbed debris, trash, and fire, making him larger and more volatile than before. Where is that skeleton? I'll kill him. The villain wasn't alone. He had a hostage. Katsuki squinted through the smoke. The villain had wrapped his slimy tendrils around a middle school student. The kid was struggling, thrashing, but the sludge was forcing its way into his mouth and nose. But it wasn't just any kid. Katsuki felt a jolt of recognition. It was Tsubasa. The kid with the rock fingers and the wings who had mocked him earlier that day. The bully who had tried to steal his notebook. Tsubasa was screaming, his wings fluttering uselessly against the slime. Stay back! The villain yelled, swinging a massive arm of sludge to smash a storefront. I'll snap his neck. The pro-heroes were there. Death Arms, Kamui Woods, Empty Lady. They were standing behind the police barricade, looking helpless. I can't get in there. Death Arms shouted, shielding his face from the heat. My punch will just scatter him, and the kid will get hurt. I need space. Empty Lady cried. The street is too narrow for me to grow. The fire is too intense. Kamui Woods yelled. My wood will burn instantly. Where are the firefighters? They were making excuses. Katsuki stood in the crowd, watching. He analyzed the situation instantly. The villain is unstable. He's panicking. He's using the fire as a shield, but he's liquid. Heat evaporates liquid. He's losing mass every second he stays near the flames. He needs a new host to hide in. That's why he grabbed the kid. The heroes, they're waiting. They're waiting for someone with the right quirk. A water type. A wind type. They're letting him die because the matchup isn't favorable. Katsuki looked at Tsubasa's face. The bully was crying. His eyes were rolling back in his head. He was dying. Just like Katsuki had been 30 minutes ago. Katsuki looked around. Nobody was moving. The crowd was filming on their phones. The heroes were radioing for backup. Pathetic. Katsuki didn't think about the law. He didn't think about his lack of powers. He didn't think about the fact that he hated Tsubasa. His body moved. Hey! Kid! Stop! Death Arms shouted. Katsuki ducked under the police tape. He sprinted toward the inferno. The heat was blistering, singing the hair on his arms. Don't engage directly. You can't punch him. Distraction. Create an opening. Katsuki reached into his school bag as he ran. He pulled out his gym clothes, synthetic polyester. He grabbed his lighter. He carried one for soldering wires. He lit the bundle of clothes on fire. Eat this, you ugly bastard. Katsuki threw the burning bundle. It wasn't a weapon, it was a flare. It sailed through the air and hit the villain right in the eye. The villain shrieked, recoiling instinctively from the new source of heat near his sensory organ. For a split second, his grip on Tsubasa loosened. The slime around Tsubasa's mouth receded. Tsubasa gasped, sucking in air. He saw Katsuki. Bakugo? Tsubasa wheezed. Katsuki didn't stop. He slid across the pavement, grabbing a discarded metal pipe from the debris. He jammed it into the villain's fluid mass, aiming for where a collarbone would be, using it as a lever. Pull yourself out, you winged freak. Katsuki screamed, straining against the slime. Don't just sit there dying. I can't. Try harder. The villain recovered. His eye reformed, glaring down at Katsuki. You again? The brat with the taser? I'm going to enjoy killing you. A massive tendril of sludge, hardened with concrete debris, rose up. It was a hammer aimed directly at Katsuki's head. Katsuki stared at it. He couldn't dodge this. He had no leverage, so this is it. At least I moved. At least I didn't stand and watch. He gritted his teeth and prepared for the impact. Boom! The impact never came. Instead, a wall of wind pressure slammed into the street, blowing the fire out instantly. The windows of the surrounding buildings shattered inward. Katsuki was thrown backward, tumbling across the asphalt. He looked up. Standing between him and the villain, one arm extended, was Izuku Midoriya. But this wasn't the tentative Izuku from the tunnel. This was something else. His uniform was ripped at the shoulder. His skin was glowing so brightly it was hard to look at him directly. The asphalt beneath his feet was melting, turning into bubbling tar. Izuku breathed heavily. Vapor poured from his mouth. I won't let you hurt them. The villain laughed nervously. You! The glowing kid? You think you can? Solar flare. Izuku clapped his hands together. It wasn't an explosion. It was a flash-bang of biblical proportions. A sphere of pure, concentrated light expanded from his hands, blinding everyone in a 3-block radius. The heat was instantaneous. The moisture in the sludge villain's body flash-boiled. Aya! The villain screamed as he burst apart, not from physical force, but because his liquid form literally turned to steam. Tsubasa fell to the ground, coughing. The villain was reduced to scattered, dried-out husks of dirt and trash. Then, the rain started. Katsuki lay on his back, looking up. Clouds were forming rapidly, drawn in by the sudden temperature change. A gentle rain began to fall on the scorched street, cooling the melted asphalt. Izuku stood in the center of it all, panting. The glow faded. He looked at his hands, trembling. Katsuki sat up. He wiped soot from his face. He looked at the heroes rushing in. They weren't rushing to Tsubasa. They weren't rushing to Katsuki. They were swarming Izuku. That was incredible. You changed the weather, kid. Just with a single smash. Look at that heat generation. You're a natural. Katsuki sat on the tailgate of an ambulance, a shock blanket wrapped around his shoulders. A paramedic was dabbing antiseptic on a scrape on his cheek. 10 feet away, Izuku was surrounded. Kamui Woods was shaking his hand. MT Lady was hugging him, playing to the cameras. Reporters were shoving microphones in his face. What's your name, hero? Is that a mutation quirk, or an emitter? Are you aiming for UA? Izuku looked overwhelmed, blushing, stammering humble apologies. I just moved, my body just... Hey! A heavy hand landed on Katsuki's shoulder. He looked up. It was Death Arms. The hero looked angry. You, the hero grunted. What the hell were you thinking? Katsuki blinked. Excuse me? You charged past a police barricade, Death Arms scolded, pointing a finger in Katsuki's face. You have no quirk. You had no plan. You just ran in there and made things worse. If that monster had taken you hostage too, we would have had double the trouble. I created an opening, Katsuki said, his voice cold. I distracted him so the kid could breathe. You got lucky, another hero, a guy with a water hose quirk, chimed in. Leave the hero work to the professionals, kid. You were reckless. That was suicide. Katsuki looked at them. Then he looked at Izuku, who was being praised for the exact same recklessness, simply because he had the power to back it up. Professionals, Katsuki spat. You professionals were standing there watching a middle schooler suffocate because you were afraid of getting your costumes dirty. What did you say? Death Arms bristled. I said you're useless. Katsuki stood up, shedding the blanket. You rely on your quirks so much you forget how to use your legs. If that's what a hero is, I don't want any part of your club. He walked away. The heroes shouted after him, calling him ungrateful, arrogant, foolish. Katsuki didn't care. He walked into the gathering dusk, the rain soaking his hair, masking the tears of rage that finally dared to fall. It was unfair. It was fundamentally, structurally, biologically unfair. The world didn't care about effort. It didn't care about bravery. It cared about whether you were born with a gun in your hand or nothing at all. He took a shortcut through a residential neighborhood to avoid the press. The streetlights flickered on, casting long, lonely shadows. Kaken! Katsuki stopped. He squeezed his eyes shut. Go away. Just go away. Running footsteps. Izuku caught up to him, panting. He was still holding his ruined backpack. Kaken, wait up! Katsuki turned slowly. What do you want, Deku? You want me to thank you? Is that it? You want me to bow down and kiss your feet because you saved the day again? No! Izuku looked horrified. I wanted to make sure you were okay. The heroes were really harsh on you. They were right, Katsuki said, his voice hollow. I was a hostage. I was weak. You weren't. Izuku stepped closer, his eyes intense. Kaken, you were the only one who moved. I was scared. I was standing there shaking until I saw you run. You inspired me, Katsuki laughed. It was a dry, broken sound. Inspired you? Don't mock me. You have the power of a sun in your chest, and you needed me to inspire you? You're the ace, Deku. You're the chosen one. I'm just the extra who gets in the way. That's not true. It is true, Katsuki screamed. Look at the reality. You win. I lose. That's how it's always been. But don't think. Katsuki poked Izuku hard in the chest. Don't think for a second that I'm going to give up. I'm going to Yue. And I'm going to beat you. Even if it kills me. He turned to leave again. I am here. A sudden gust of wind blew past them, knocking over a trash can. All Might slid out from behind a corner, striking a pose. All Might? Izuku yelped. Why are you here? You were surrounded by reporters. I shook them off. All Might laughed, blood spurting from his mouth. I am a master of evasion. He deflated instantly, turning back into the skeleton man. He coughed, wiping his mouth. Young Midoriya. Young Bakugo. He looked at Izuku first. Midoriya. You have a phenomenal power. That weather-changing smash, it reminded me of myself in my prime. Izuku beamed. Thank you? But All Might interrupted, holding up a hand. You were reckless. You endangered civilians with that heat. You acted on emotion, not strategy. Power without control is just destruction. Izuku's smile faltered. Oh, All Might turned to Katsuki. The look in his eyes was different. It wasn't the look he gave fans. It was the look of a craftsman seeing a raw, uncut diamond. Bakugo Katsuki. Katsuki straightened up, wary. Yeah, I've been watching you, All Might said. In the tunnel. And in the street. The heroes scolded you. They told you that you were wrong. I know, Katsuki muttered. They were idiots, All Might said firmly. Katsuki's head snapped up. There is a story that every top hero shares, All Might said, looking at the sky. From their school days, when asked why they ran into danger, why they moved when others stood still, they all say the same thing. All Might looked directly into Katsuki's crimson eyes. My body moved on its own. Katsuki felt a lump form in his throat. You have no quirk, All Might said. You had no weapon but your mind and a lighter. You were terrified. And yet you were the first on the scene. You acted more like a hero than anyone else there today. All Might took a step forward. Midoriya has the power, All Might said, acknowledging Izuku. But power can be given. Power can be cultivated. But that spirit? That instinct to save, even when you are weak? That cannot be taught. He extended a hand toward Katsuki. Young Bakugo. You told me you wanted to win. You told me you wanted to be a hero. Katsuki trembled. The words he had waited 10 years to hear. The words the doctor had denied him. The words his mother had been too afraid to say. You can be a hero, All Might said. Katsuki bit his lip. He refused to cry. He refused. But the tears fell anyway, hot and fast. He doubled over, clutching his chest, sobbing silently on the pavement. I deem you worthy, All Might continued, his voice solemn. Worthy to inherit my power. Both boys froze. Inherit? Izuku whispered. Wait, what? Katsuki wiped his eyes aggressively. What are you talking about, old man? Inherit? Quirks aren't clothes. You can't just pass them down. All Might laughed softly. Usually, no. But my quirk is unique. It is a sacred torch, passed from one generation to the next. Its name is One for All, he explained it. The stockpiling of power. The transfer of strength. The legacy of 8 users before him. I have been looking for a successor, All Might said. Someone to take this torch and run with it. Someone who has the drive to stand at the top. He looked at Izuku. Young Midoriya, you are strong. You were born strong. But because of that, you may not understand the weight of weakness. You may not understand the struggle of those who have nothing. He looked back at Katsuki. But you, young Bakugo, you have clawed your way here with nothing but grit. You have a strategic mind that rivals pros. You have a hunger that scares me. If I give you this power, if I add the ultimate strength to your ultimate drive, you won't just be a hero. All Might grinned. You will be the greatest. Katsuki looked at his hands. Quirkless hands. Hands that had built grenades out of soda cans. Hands that had broken punching bags. Why not him? Katsuki pointed at Izuku. He's already got a god-tier quirk. If you gave it to him, he'd be invincible. Perhaps, All Might admitted. But a cup that is already full cannot hold more water. And besides, All Might's eyes twinkled. I think the world needs a hero who knows what it's like to be on the bottom. It keeps the ego in check. Izuku stood there stunned. He wasn't jealous. He was relieved. He looked at Katsuki. Kaken, Izuku said softly. You should do it. Katsuki looked at Izuku. For the first time in years, the glare was gone. You realize what this means, Deku? Katsuki asked, a savage grin slowly spreading across his face. What? If I take this, I'm not just going to catch up to you. Katsuki clenched his fist. I'm going to leave you in the dust. Izuku smiled, the sun glowing in his eyes. Try it. Katsuki turned to All Might. He wiped the last tear from his face. He stood tall, his spine straight, his fear gone. I'll do it, Katsuki said. Give me your power, All Might. And I'll show you a hero who never loses. All Might nodded. A quick answer. I like that. But be warned, this will not be easy. Your body is not ready. If you took this power now, your limbs would explode. So what? Katsuki scoffed. I'll train. I've been training my whole life. This is different, All Might said ominously. This is hell. Bring it on. 1 week later. Dagoba Municipal Beach Park. The beach was a graveyard of trash. Tires, refrigerators, broken cars. Mountains of garbage accumulated by the tides and illegal dumping. This is it? Katsuki asked, looking at the mess. He was wearing a tracksuit, his arms crossed. All Might sat on top of a refrigerator in his muscle form, for public appearances. This is your gym, young Bakugo. You must clean this entire section of the beach within 10 months. It will build the vessel required to hold One for All. Katsuki scanned the beach. He did a quick mental calculation of the volume of trash, the weight, the time available. Inefficient, Katsuki muttered. Excuse me? All Might blinked. Just hauling trash is inefficient, Katsuki said, pulling a notebook from his bag. If I just lift things, I'll build muscle, sure. But I need functional strength. I need dynamic movement. He walked over to a rusted truck chassis. I'm not just going to drag this, Katsuki said. I'm going to organize it. I'll separate the recyclables. I'll strip the copper wire for money to buy better protein supplements. And I'm going to map out the terrain to practice uneven footing combat while I carry the loads. He looked at All Might. And you? You're not just watching. I'm not. No, Katsuki tossed him a rope. You're going to apply resistance. If I'm going to inherit the strongest power, I need to be used to fighting against it. Pull back. All Might stared at the boy. Usually, the student complained about the workload. This one was redesigning the curriculum. All Might grinned. You really are a demon, aren't you? I'm a perfectionist, Katsuki corrected. He grabbed the bumper of the truck. Now pull, old man. From the boardwalk above, a figure watched them. Izuku stood leaning against the railing, holding a sports drink. He watched Katsuki scream as he dragged the truck through the sand, veins bulging in his neck. Izuku took a sip of his drink. He felt a flicker of something in his chest. It wasn't pity anymore. And it wasn't just friendship. It was fear. Katsuki was right. If he got that quirk. Izuku looked at his own hand, letting a small sphere of solar plasma dance between his fingers. I'd better not slack off, Izuku whispered to himself. He crushed the can, tossed it into a recycling bin with a perfect arc, and turned to jog away. The drift was over. The race had begun. The smell of the Dagoba Municipal Beach Park was not something that could be described in polite society. It was a complex bouquet of rotting kelp, rusted iron, waterlogged mattresses, and the distinct, sulphurous tang of despair. It was the scent of a place the world had forgotten. Katsuki Bakugo stood at the top of the concrete stairs leading down to the sand, his hands on his hips, breathing it in. He didn't gag. He didn't cover his nose. He analyzed it. Tires, he muttered. At least 400 of them. Appliances, mostly fridges and washing machines. Heavy, awkward centers of gravity. Driftwood, unpredictable density. Beside him, All Might stood in his muscular form, striking a pose that looked ridiculous against the backdrop of garbage. Behold, young Bakugo. The hero boomed. Your training ground. Over the next 10 months, you will restore this coastline to its former glory. In doing so, you will forge a vessel capable of holding one for all. He produced a stack of papers from nowhere. I have prepared the aim to pass, American Dream Plan. It details your diet, sleep schedule, and lifting regimen. Katsuki snatched the papers. He scanned the first page. Then the second. His brow furrowed. This is garbage, Katsuki said flatly. All Might choked. A spray of blood misted the air as he deflated into his skeletal form. Garbage? I spent all night on that. It's generalized, Katsuki said, pulling a red pen from his pocket and aggressively circling a paragraph. You have me doing high-rep calisthenics in the morning and heavy lifting in the evening. That's inefficient for hypertrophy given my current muscle density. And this diet? Too many carbs, not enough lipids. My body burns energy faster than average because of my high resting heart rate. If I follow this, I'll pass out by week 3. He shoved the papers back at All Might. I'm rewriting it. All Might stared at the boy. In all his years, he had never met a teenager who critiqued a workout plan with the ferocity of a drill sergeant. You're rewriting my plan? I'm optimizing it, Katsuki corrected. He dropped his bag and marched down the stairs. You said I need to clear this beach? Fine. But we're not just moving trash. We're fighting a war against physics, and I don't lose wars. He walked up to a massive, rusted truck tire half buried in the sand. He didn't just grab it. He kicked the sand away from the base, checked the rim for sharp edges, and squatted low, driving his heels into the ground. Hey, skeleton! Katsuki shouted over his shoulder. Don't just stand there gaping. Start a timer. I need to calculate my baseline moving speed per 100 pounds. All Might watched the boy heave the tire onto his shoulder with a guttural roar. A smile tugged at the hero's gaunt face. He's not waiting for me to teach him, All Might thought. He's demanding that I keep up. Month 1, the foundation. The first month was less about building muscle and more about breaking the spirit. It was February, and the ocean wind was biting. The sand was freezing in the morning and treacherous in the afternoon. Katsuki didn't treat the trash like trash. He treated it like enemies. Die! He screamed, dragging a refrigerator across the soft sand with a rope tied around his waist. Every step was a battle. His quads burned like they were filled with battery acid. All Might jogged backward in front of him, holding a stopwatch. Keep your back straight, young Bakugo. Engage the core. Shut up. Katsuki gritted out, sweat dripping from his nose. I know, Katsuki had modified the training. He wasn't just dragging, he was multitasking. In his hands he held a textbook, Advanced Fluid Dynamics. He was memorizing equations while his body screamed for mercy. Why the book? All Might asked during a break, handing Katsuki a water bottle. Katsuki downed half the bottle in one gulp. UA isn't just a gym. It's a school. I need to be top of the class in the written exam, too. If I'm going to be number one, I can't be an idiot. You're already at the top of your grade, All Might pointed out. Deku is tied with me, Katsuki spat the name like a curse. He has a photographic memory or something. He reads a hero bio once and recites it forever. I have to work for it. Katsuki looked at his hands. They were blistered, raw, and shaking. He has a head start, Katsuki whispered. He's had that solar core for 10 years. His body is adapted to stress. I'm playing catch up. I don't have time to do one thing at a time. He stood up, his legs trembling. Next set. The washing machines. Month 3, the gap. Aldera Junior High felt different. Or maybe Katsuki was just seeing it through a different lens. He was exhausted constantly. He fell asleep in history. He dozed off during lunch. His temper, usually a hair-trigger explosion, had dulled into a constant, low-level irritability. And then there was Izuku. Izuku Midoriya was shining. Literally. He had apparently started his own training regimen to prepare for UA, though he didn't talk about it. He just looked denser. His shoulders were broader. The glow under his skin seemed more stable, less prone to emotional fluctuations. In P class, they were playing basketball. Midoriya! A classmate shouted, throwing a high pass. Izuku leaped. He didn't just jump, he floated. A burst of heat from his soles propelled him 6 feet into the air. He caught the ball and dunked it with a casual grace that made the girls on the sidelines squeal. Nice shot, Deku. Uraraka, who had transferred in recently? No, just a random classmate cheering, shouted. Katsuki sat on the bench, nursing a bruised shoulder from a run-in with a rusted filing cabinet earlier that morning. He watched Izuku land. Izuku jogged over to the bench to grab a towel. He saw Katsuki. You didn't play today, Kaken, Izuku said. He didn't sound mocking. He sounded worried. Are you feeling okay? You've been sleeping a lot lately. I'm fine, Katsuki muttered, staring at the floor. You know, Izuku hesitated, wringing the towel in his hands. If you're tired, maybe you should rethink the hero course. The general studies track is really good at UA too. There's no shame in, Katsuki snapped. He stood up so fast the bench rattled. He grabbed the front of Izuku's gym shirt. Listen to me, Katsuki hissed, leaning in close. The heat radiating off Izuku was palpable, like standing next to a radiator. I don't want your advice. I don't want your concern, and I definitely don't want your permission. The gym went silent. Everyone watched. The Quirkless kid threatening the ace. Izuku didn't flinch. He looked at Katsuki's hand, then up at his eyes. I'm not telling you to quit because I think you're weak, Kaken, Izuku said softly. I'm saying it because you look like you're killing yourself. You have bags under your eyes. Your hands are shaking. I'm forging myself, Katsuki shoved him away. You were born with a silver spoon in your mouth. You don't know what it takes to build a spoon from dirt. Midoriya! Bakugo! Break it up! The gym teacher shouted. Katsuki grabbed his bag and walked out of the gym. He skipped the rest of the day. He went back to the beach. There were still 300 tires to move. Month 6, the plateau. Progress stalled. It was raining, a torrential downpour that turned the beach into a slurry of mud and trash. Katsuki was trying to move a rusted engine block. It wouldn't budge. His feet kept slipping. He pulled. He strained. He screamed. Nothing. He fell face first into the mud. He lay there, the rain pelting his back, mixing with the grime. Damn it! He slammed his fist into the sand. Damn it, damn it, damn it! All Might, sheltering under a large umbrella nearby, stepped forward. Young Bakugo, take a break. The weather is against us. The weather doesn't matter. Katsuki rolled over, sitting up in the muck. Villains don't wait for sunny days. If I can't move a stupid engine block, how am I supposed to hold the strongest quirk in existence? He looked at his arms. They were more muscular now, defined and hard, but they still looked thin compared to All Might's hero form. Compared to Izuku's natural bulk. I'm not ready, Katsuki whispered. The fear that had been gnawing at him for months finally found a voice. I'm going to fail. I'm going to get to the exam, and I'm going to be nothing. All Might dropped the umbrella. He let the rain soak his skeletal frame as he sat down in the mud next to Katsuki. Do you know why I chose you? All Might asked. Katsuki wiped mud from his eyes. Because I moved. Because I was crazy enough to attack the sludge villain. That was the catalyst, yes, All Might said. But that's not why I keep coming back here every morning at 4 a.m. All Might pointed at the pile of trash behind them. It was neat. Organized. Stacked. Look at that pile. You didn't just throw it there. You stacked the metal scraps by alloy type. You separated the plastics. You created a system. All Might tapped his own temple. Midoriya. He is a force of nature. He is power incarnate. But you? You are a force of will. You are an architect. You are building a hero from the ground up. All Might stood up and offered a hand. Plateaus happen. They are part of the process. It means your body is recalibrating. Tomorrow, we switch tactics. No more heavy lifting for a week. We focus on speed and reaction. Shock the muscles. Katsuki looked at the hand. He hesitated, then grabbed it. If I fail, Katsuki said, pulling himself up, I'm blaming your coaching. All Might laughed. I would expect nothing less. Month 10, the horizon, the day of the exam. Katsuki stood on the boardwalk, looking down. The beach was gone. In its place was a pristine stretch of white sand, glittering under the morning sun. The ocean lapped gently at the shore, free of tires and plastic. The sunrise painted the water in hues of orange and pink. It was beautiful. Katsuki stood shirtless, the cold wind hitting his skin. He looked different. The scrawny, angry kid from 10 months ago was gone. In his place was a young man carved from granite. His muscles weren't bulky like a bodybuilder's. They were lean, dense, and functional. Every cord of sinew was visible. He had scars on his hands, scrapes on his shoulders, and a hardness in his eyes that hadn't been there before. He had done it. All Might arrived, puffing into his muscle form. Oh my goodness! He looked at the beach, then at Katsuki. You finished 3 days early? I optimized the sleep schedule in the last month, Katsuki said, pulling her shirt on. Found an extra hour of productivity per day. You truly are terrifying, All Might beamed. But you have done it. The vessel is ready. All Might reached up and plucked a single golden hair from his bangs. He held it out to Katsuki. This is it, young Bakugo. The culmination of your hellish efforts. Eat this. Katsuki stared at the hair. He stared at All Might. Ha! It contains my DNA, All Might explained, still grinning. To transfer the power, you must ingest my DNA. The hair is the easiest way. Katsuki's face twisted in disgust. That is revolting. Is this a joke? Is this some kind of hazing ritual? No. It is the sacred transfer, whatever. Katsuki snatched the hair. He looked at it with the same analytical glare he used on the trash. If I get a hairball, I'm suing you. He threw it into his mouth and swallowed dry. He waited. Nothing happened. Katsuki looked at his hands. He clenched his fists. I don't feel anything. It takes time to digest, All Might said, patting him on the back. And usually, the power activates when you summon it. But be careful. Your body is ready, but your control is non-existent. If you use 100% right away, you will shatter your limbs. Great, Katsuki muttered. So I have a loaded gun with no safety, and I don't know how to pull the trigger. Perfect for an entrance exam. You have 3 days, All Might said. Rest. Let the power settle. Do not train. Just be. Rest, Katsuki scoffed. I'll try. The day of the exam. The gates of UA High towered over the students like the entrance to Olympus. Katsuki walked alone. He wore his middle school uniform, but it fit differently now. The fabric was tied across the chest and arms. He walked with a predator's gait, silent, balanced, ready. He saw Izuku ahead of him. Izuku was looking at the gate with starry eyes, muttering to himself. He took a step, tripped on his own foot, some things never change, and began to fall. Before he hit the ground, a girl with a bob cut touched his backpack. Izuku floated. Whoa! Izuku flailed. Sorry for using my quirk on you. The girl chirped. But it's bad luck to fall on the exam day. Katsuki walked past them without stopping. He didn't look at Izuku. He didn't look at the girl. He was focused inward, searching for the spark. Where is it? He had spent the last 3 days trying to activate one for all. He had screamed at the wall. He had tried to lift his bed. He had tried to punch the air. Nothing. No lightning. No strength. Did it fail? Was my body not ready? Was the hair a dud? The anxiety was a cold knot in his stomach. He was walking into a war zone with an empty magazine. The written exam. This was the easy part. Katsuki sat in the lecture hall, his pencil flying across the paper. Question 4. Analyze the structural integrity compromises caused by a villain with a vibration quirk in a suspension bridge scenario. Easy. Resonance frequency. Harmonics. Dampening materials. He finished the exam with 20 minutes to spare. He looked around. Izuku was also finished, staring into space, probably calculating sun angles. Katsuki cracked his knuckles. At least I'll ace this part. The practical exam, Battle Center B. This was the hard part. Katsuki stood in the crowd of examinees in front of the massive gates of Battle Center B. He was wearing a black tank top and cargo pants, his costume for the exam. On his belt he had strapped a pry bar, a roll of industrial tape, and a pair of heavy-duty knuckles. The other students were eyeing him. Is that Bakugo? The Quirkless kid? Why is he wearing climbing gear? Maybe he's gonna fix the robots to death? Laughter. Katsuki ignored them. He was stretching his calves. If the quirk doesn't activate, he strategized, I have to rely on weak points. The robots are mass-produced. They'll have exposed wiring at the joints. The neck sensors will be fragile. I can use their own momentum against them. And start. President Mick's voice boomed from the tower. What are you waiting for? There are no countdowns in real battles. Go, go, go. The crowd surged forward. Katsuki didn't sprint blindly. He identified a side alley and darted into it. He needed isolation. He couldn't compete with the AoE blasters in the main street. He rounded a corner and came face to face with a one-pointer. A unicycle-style robot with machine guns. Target acquired. The robot chirped. Katsuki gritted his teeth. Come on, one for all. Work. He punched. His fist connected with the metal plating. Clang. Pain shot up his arm. No super strength. Just bone hitting steel. Shit! Katsuki hissed. The robot raised its arm. Katsuki ducked under the swing, relying on his reflexes. He didn't have power, but he had 10 months of dodging all might. He scrambled up the side of a dumpster, leaped onto the robot's shoulders, and jammed his pry bar into the gap between the head and the chassis. Die! He wrenched the bar. Sparks flew. The robot's head popped off, wires trailing. It slumped over. 1 point, Katsuki panted, dropping to the ground. His knuckles were bleeding. 1 point. Only 40 more to be safe. Meanwhile, in the main street, boom! A massive explosion of heat rocked the center. Izuku Midoriya stood in the middle of the road. He was surrounded by the wreckage of 10 three-pointers. He hadn't even touched them. He had just released a pulse of solar wind that knocked them all offline. 40 points. Izuku counted, wiping sweat from his forehead. I need to be careful not to melt the buildings. He looked around. I wonder how Kaken is doing? 10 minutes later, Katsuki was in hell. He had 12 points. He was exhausted. His pry bar was bent. His knuckles were bruised purple. He was bleeding from a cut on his forehead. He was fighting a 2-pointer in an alleyway. He had tricked it into running into a wall, but it was still active. Why won't it work? Katsuki screamed internally. He could feel the energy inside him, a hum, a vibration deep in his gut, but he couldn't access it. It was like a locked door with no key. 6 minutes remaining. President Mike announced, I'm going to fail. The reality washed over him. He was going to fail. Izuku was probably at 60 points by now. All that trash cleaning. All that studying. All for nothing. I'm just a quirkless extra. Then, the ground shook. It wasn't an explosion. It was an earthquake. From the center of the city, a shadow rose. It eclipsed the sun, the 0-pointer. It was bigger than a skyscraper. Its treads crushed buildings like cardboard boxes. Dust and debris filled the air. Run! It's huge! Forget points. Just survive! The students were fleeing in terror. A stampede of Quirks running away from the monster. Katsuki stood in the alley, watching the giant robot loom over the city. It's a gimmick, he analyzed, his brain working automatically despite his despair. An obstacle to avoid. There's no point fighting it. He turned to run. Oh wow! A cry for help. Katsuki stopped. He looked back. Trapped under a slab of concrete in the middle of the main street was the girl with the bob cut, Uraraka. She was struggling to free her leg. The zero-pointer was rolling directly toward her. Help! She screamed. The other students were too far away. They were running, except one. Izuku Midoriya was standing 50 meters away. He was facing the robot. He was glowing. He's going to blast it, Katsuki thought. He'll save her. Izuku raised his hands. The air shimmered. He prepared a massive solar lance. But then, Izuku froze. Katsuki saw it. He saw the calculation in Izuku's eyes. If he shoots that much heat at the robot, the explosion will be massive. The girl is right underneath it. The radiant heat alone would burn her. The falling molten slag would crush her. Izuku lowered his hands. He took a step forward then stopped. He was paralyzed by his own power. He couldn't shoot without killing the hostage. The robot was 10 seconds away. Move! Izuku screamed, trying to run to her, but he was too far. He wouldn't make it in time without using his quirk for speed, which would incinerate the asphalt she was lying on. Katsuki watched. The ace was stuck. The god-tier quirk was useless. Someone had to move. Someone who could get close without burning everything. Someone who could hit hard without collateral damage. My body moved on its own. Katsuki didn't think about his 12 points. He didn't think about his bruised knuckles. He didn't think about the fact that he was quirkless. He ran. He sprinted out of the alley. He moved faster than he ever had on the beach. He was a blur of rage and instinct. Get away from her! Katsuki roared. He reached the girl. He grabbed the concrete slab. Lift. He hauled it up. It was heavy, impossibly heavy. His back screamed. But he flipped it off her leg. Get up! He yelled at her. My ankle! She gasped. The robot was right above them. A massive metal hand was descending to crush them. Katsuki looked up. He saw the metal palm blocking out the sky. He couldn't run. Not carrying her. He had to fight. He looked at the robot. He felt the hum in his gut. The locked door. Open the damn door. He clenched his butt cheeks, just like All Might had jokingly said once. He screamed from the bottom of his soul. He poured every ounce of his frustration, his jealousy, his desire to win, into his right arm. I am not worthless. Click. The door opened. A surge of power, red, lightning crackled, overwhelming power, flooded his veins. It felt like sticking a fork in a socket. It felt like his bones were turning into fire. Katsuki laughed. A manic, feral grin split his face. He bent his knees. The pavement cracked beneath his boots. He launched himself upward. He flew. He rocketed straight up toward the descending hand. Die! He swung his right fist. The red lightning danced around his arm. Smash! He connected with the robot's palm. The impact was deafening. A shockwave of pure kinetic force exploded outward, shattering the windows of every building in a mile radius. The robot's arm crumbled. The force traveled up the limb, twisting the metal, blowing out the joints. The massive head of the zero-pointer snapped back, and the entire machine toppled backward, crashing into the buildings behind it with a sound like the end of the world. Katsuki hung in the air for a second, suspended in the dust and glory. I did it. Then the pain hit. His right arm was purple. Broken. Twisted at an unnatural angle. His legs flailed. He was falling. Fast. Slap! A hand touched his back. He stopped falling, floating gently. Izuku was there, hovering next to him, using thermal updrafts. He grabbed Katsuki's shirt. Kaken! Izuku's eyes were wide, filled with terror and awe. You destroyed it. They drifted to the ground. Izuku deactivated his heat, setting Katsuki down gently. Katsuki lay on the pavement. His arm was throbbing with a pain so white-hot it made his vision blur. "Time's up," President Mike announced. Silence fell over the battle center. The dust settled. The students crept back out of hiding. They stared at the fallen giant. Then they stared at the boy lying on the ground. Did the Quirkless kid do that? He one-shot the 0-pointer. I thought he didn't have a quirk. He must have been hiding it. That was terrifying. Uraraka crawled over to him. You saved me. Thank you? Thank you so much. Katsuki looked at the sky. He tried to move his arm. He couldn't, but he smiled. He closed his eyes and let the darkness take him. The infirmary. Ouch. Katsuki woke up with a jolt. Recovery Girl was kissing his forehead. A warm glow spread through his body. Stop moving, you reckless child, the old woman scolded. You completely shattered your right arm and fractured your left leg. What were you thinking, using that kind of power? Katsuki looked at his arm. It was casted heavily. It ached, but the sharp pain was gone. I had to, Katsuki croaked. Well, you're lucky I'm here, she sighed, handing him a packet of gummies. Eat these. You'll need the energy. The surgery went well, but you'll have scars. The door opened. All Might squeezed into the room. He was in his skeletal form. Luckily, no one else was there. Young Bakugo. All Might cried, tears streaming down his face. That was magnificent. A Detroit smash on your first try. It broke my arm, Katsuki grumbled, chewing a gummy. Details. All Might waved his hand. You saved the girl. You faced the threat. That is the essence of a hero. But I failed, Katsuki said, staring at the ceiling. I have 12 villain points. I checked the scoreboard before I passed out. 12 points isn't enough to pass. All Might went silent. He looked at Recovery Girl. Rest now, All Might said gently. The results will arrive in a week. Don't give up hope yet. 1 week later, Katsuki sat at the dinner table. His mother, Mitsuki, was pacing. His father, Masaru, was cleaning his glasses nervously. The letter was on the table. Just open it, Katsuki, Mitsuki yelled. I can't take the suspense. Shut up, old hag. I'm mentally preparing. Katsuki grabbed the envelope. He ripped it open. A holographic disc fell out. It projected onto the wall. All Might appeared. I am here. As a projection. All Might? Mitsuki gasped. Why is All Might on the video? Young Bakugo. The hologram boomed. You did well in the written exam. But in the practical. 12 points. A failing grade. Katsuki closed his eyes. I knew it. However, Katsuki opened his eyes. A hero's job is to save people. How can a hero course reject someone who saves others at the risk of their own life? The video cut to a clip of Uraraka speaking to Present Mike. Please. Give him my points. He saved me. He jumped when everyone else ran. Rescue points. All Might shouted. A hidden metric. For your selfless act against the 0-pointer, the judges have awarded you 60 rescue points. Total score, 72 points. You pass. All Might extended a hand toward the camera. Come, young Bakugo. This is your hero academia. The hologram faded. The room was silent. Mitsuki burst into tears, grabbing Katsuki in a chokehold hug. You did it! You brat, you actually did it. Masaru was crying too. I knew you could. Even without a, wait, did you manifest a quirk? How did you destroy a robot? Katsuki sat there, being strangled by his mother. He looked at the blank screen. 72 points. He had passed. He looked at his hand, the one that had broken. He flexed his fingers. I'm in. He thought of Izuku. Izuku had probably scored 100 points. Izuku was probably celebrating right now. Don't get comfortable, Deku, Katsuki thought, a fierce grin returning to his face. I'm coming for you. And this time, I'm bringing the thunder. He was no longer the quirkless kid. He was the inheritor. And hell was just getting started. The uniform felt like a second skin, but not in a comfortable way. It was a layer of armor, stiff and starched, bearing the UA embroidery on the breast pocket, a sigil that screamed prestige. Katsuki Bakugo adjusted his tie for the 4th time as he walked through the massive, towering archway of UA High. His right arm, encased in a sleek, compression fabric brace hidden beneath his blazer, throbbed with a dull, phantom ache. A reminder of the zero-pointer. A reminder of the power that was currently dormant in his gut, coiled like a venomous snake he didn't know how to charm. Hey! Wait up! Katsuki didn't stop, but he knew the voice. Ochako Uraraka. The girl with the gravity quirk. The girl he had saved. She jogged up beside him, panting slightly. She looked pristine in the girl's uniform, her bobbed hair bouncing. I didn't see you at the ceremony. I wanted to thank you again for, not dying. Katsuki kept walking, his eyes fixed forward. I didn't do it for you. You were just in the way. Right, she beamed, completely undeterred by his abrasive tone. Well, whatever the reason, I'm here because of you. So, thanks. I'm Uraraka Ochako, by the way. Bakugo, he grunted. So, Bakugo-kun, she lowered her voice, leaning in conspiratorially. That punch, was that really your first time using your quirk? I heard some people talking. Rumors that you were on the Quirkless registry? Katsuki stopped. The crowd of students parted around them like a stream around a jagged rock. He turned his crimson eyes on her. They were cold, sharp, and assessing. Don't believe everything you hear from extras, Katsuki said quietly. People love to talk about things they don't understand. He walked away before she could ask another question, leaving her blinking in confusion. The rumor. Of course. It would follow him. In a society where quirks manifested by age 4, a late bloomer at 15 was medically impossible. To the world, he was either a freak of nature or a liar. He didn't care what they thought. He only cared about the heat. He could feel it before he saw it. As he approached the towering door labeled 1A, the air grew warmer. Not humid, but dry and intense, like standing near a kiln. Katsuki gripped the handle. He's in there. He slid the door open. Get your feet off the desk. It is disrespectful to the UA upperclassmen who sat there before you and to the craftsmen who built it. Ha! Stop buzzing in my ear, Four Eyes. I'll put my feet where I want. The scene was chaotic. A tall, bespectacled boy with engines in his calves was chopping the air aggressively at a boy with messy purple hair. And in the center of the room, surrounded by a cluster of eager classmates, sat Izuku Midoriya. Izuku was laughing at something a pink-skinned girl said. He looked radiant. Literally. A soft, golden luminescence played over his skin, a byproduct of his high excitement levels. He was the sun, and the rest of the class were planets caught in his orbit. Katsuki stepped into the room. The temperature seemed to drop and rise at the same time. Izuku looked up. His smile faltered, replaced by a complex expression, relief, wariness, and that damned hope. Kaken! Izuku stood up, knocking his chair back slightly. Your arm. Is it okay? The class went silent. This was the guy. The one who destroyed the zero-pointer. The one with the mystery quirk. Katsuki walked past Izuku without looking at him. He found an empty desk near the back, behind the engine-leg guy. He threw his bag down. It's attached, Katsuki muttered. That's good, Izuku stammered. He seemed to want to say more, to bridge the gap that had been widening for a decade, but Katsuki's posture was a fortress wall. So you're the one! A boy with red spiky hair, Kirishima, if Katsuki remembered the entrance exam chatter, grinned, leaning over Katsuki's desk. I saw the video of your smash. That was manly as hell, dude, but crazy risky. You broke yourself, right? Risk is part of the job, Katsuki said, pulling out a textbook. If you're afraid of breaking a bone, go to business school. Whoa, intense, Kirishima laughed, not offended in the slightest. If you're here to make friends, you can pack up and leave. The voice came from the floor. The class froze. Slowly, everyone turned to the doorway. A yellow sleeping bag, looking like a giant, discarded caterpillar, was lying on the floor. A face, unshaven and exhausted, peeked out from the opening. The caterpillar stood up, shedding the sleeping bag to reveal a man dressed entirely in black, with a capture scarf wound around his neck. He looked like he hadn't slept since the pre-quirk era. It took you 8 seconds to quiet down, the man said, checking a stopwatch. Time is a finite resource. You lot are not rational enough. He scanned the room with bloodshot, dry eyes. I'm your homeroom teacher, Shota Aizawa. Homeroom teacher? The class gasped in unison. He looked more like a homeless person than a hero. Aizawa reached into his sleeping bag and pulled out a blue gym uniform. Put these on. Meet me on the P grounds. Immediately, the locker room was a buzz of nervous energy. The boys were changing quickly, stealing glances at each other, sizing up the competition. Did you see the teacher's eyes? A blond boy with a sparkle belt, Oyama asked. So intense, yet so lack of sparkle. He's a pro hero, Ida said, adjusting his glasses while standing in his boxers. Eraserhead. He's an underground hero who specializes in stealth and capture. It makes sense that Yue would employ diverse tactics. Katsuki stripped off his shirt. His back was defined, muscles shifting like steel cables under his skin. The scar from the sludge villain incident, a chemical burn on his shoulder, was faint but visible. But more prominent were the fresh surgical scars on his right arm, pink and angry. Whoa, Bakugo, Kirishima whistled. You're shredded, man. What kind of workout do you do? The kind that makes you puke, Katsuki muttered, pulling the blue gym shirt on. Across the room, Izuku was changing. His physique was different. Where Katsuki was lean and wire-tight, Izuku was heavy. Densely packed muscle, built to contain the fusion reactor in his chest. When he took his shirt off, the room got noticeably brighter. Hey, Midoriya, a short boy with great balls on his head, Mineta, whispered loudly. Do you glow everywhere? Izuku turned bright red, the heat in the room spiking. What? No. It's metabolic excess energy. Stop looking. Katsuki slammed his locker shut. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Stop flirting and move, he growled. Or are we going to be late on the first day? He marched out. Izuku watched him go, his expression troubled. The P grounds were vast, an open expanse of dirt and track under the blue sky. Aizawa stood with his hands in his pockets, looking bored. A Quirk assessment test? The class shouted. But what about orientation? Uraraka asked. And the guidance counselor meeting? If you want to be a hero, you don't have time for such leisurely events, Aizawa said flatly. U.A. As selling point is freedom of style. That applies to the teachers as well. He held up a softball throw. The standing long jump. The 50-meter dash. Endurance running. Grip strength. Upper body training. Seated toe touch. Sit-ups. You did these in middle school, right? No quirks allowed. He tossed the ball in the air and caught it. The country still insists on prohibiting quirks when calculating the average of physical records. It's not rational. The Ministry of Education is procrastinating. Aizawa turned his gaze to the group. Bakugo. Katsuki stiffened. You finished second in the entrance exam, Aizawa said. The class murmured. Second? Who was first? Everyone looked at Izuku. In junior high, what was your best result for the softball throw? 67 meters, Katsuki answered. Then try it with your quirk. Katsuki stepped into the circle. The air felt heavy. He looked at the ball in his hand. With my quirk. He remembered the feeling from the exam. The door opening. The red lightning. The shattering pain. If I use 100%, I break my arm. If I break my arm, I can't do the rest of the tests. If I can't do the tests, he gripped the ball. He needed to regulate it. All Might had said to picture an egg in a microwave. Don't let it explode. Lower the voltage. He squeezed his eyes shut. Focus. 5%. Just a nudge. He wound up. He felt the hum in his stomach. He tried to draw out a thread of power, but the thread was a torrent. It rushed to his arm. Panic flared. He tried to shove it back, to clamp down on the flow. In the confusion of internal struggle, the throw was disjointed. Rah! Katsuki threw the ball. A small spark of red electricity crackled at his elbow, then fizzled out. The ball flew, propelled mostly by his raw physical strength. It landed. Aizawa checked the device. 70 meters. Silence. Kaminari scratched his head. That's not much different. I thought he destroyed a giant robot. Cyril whispered. Maybe he's a one-hit wonder? Katsuki stood in the circle, his hand shaking. Not from pain, but from rage. He had choked. He had been too afraid of the recoil to commit, and the result was mediocrity. Is that it? Aizawa asked, his voice dripping with disappointment. That was irrational. You have power, but you hesitated. Katsuki gritted his teeth. I'm warming up. Midoriya, Aizawa called out. You were first in the exam. You're up. Izuku stepped forward. He took the ball from Aizawa. He didn't look nervous. He looked focused. Do your best, Izuku. Uraraka cheered. Izuku stood in the circle. He took a deep breath. Thum. The sound was felt in the chest more than heard. The air around Izuku began to distort. Heat waves radiated from his body. The grass at the edge of the circle began to brown and curl. Solar core output 15%, Izuku muttered. The light gathered in his right arm, turning his veins into glowing rivers of gold. He wound up, his form perfect. Smash! He threw the ball. At the moment of release, a concentrated blast of superheated air propelled the object. There was a sonic boom. A ring of dust expanded outward, knocking the nearest students back. The ball didn't just fly, it vanished. It tore through the sky, leaving a trail of white vapor like a meteor in reverse. Aizawa looked at his device. He turned it around to show the class. Infinity. It went into orbit. Aizawa deadpanned. Infinity? The class screamed. That's a god-tier quirk. Kaminari yelled. He's amazing. Izuku rubbed the back of his neck, the glow fading. I might have used a bit too much thermal updraft. Katsuki stood on the sidelines. He felt cold. 70 meters. Infinity. The gap wasn't just wide. It was a canyon. This is going to be fun. Mina Ashido cheered. We can use our quirks as much as we want. Fun? Aizawa's voice cut through the excitement like a razor wire. He lowered the device. His hair seemed to float slightly. You have 3 years to become a hero. Will you have an attitude like that the whole time? He grinned. It was a smile that promised pain. All right. Whoever comes in last place in all 8 tests will be judged to have no potential. He swept his gaze over them, lingering for a fraction of a second on Katsuki, and will be punished with expulsion. The air left the lungs of Class 1A. Expulsion? Uraraka cried. But it's the first day. That's too unreasonable. Natural disasters, big accidents, crazy villains, Aizawa listed. Calamities that cannot be predicted. Japan is covered in unfairness. Heroes are the ones who reverse those situations. He pointed to the track. Go beyond. Plus ultra. Now, let's get to the real demonstration. Test 1, 50-meter dash. The pressure was suffocating. Katsuki stood at the starting line next to Tenya Ida. I have to win, Katsuki thought. I can't use one for all to run. If I blow out my legs, it's over. I have to rely on the beach. On your mark. Get set. Pow! Ida was a blur. His engines roared. 3.04 seconds. Katsuki sprinted. He dug his cleats into the dirt. His form was perfect, his explosive acceleration honed by martial arts. 5.58 seconds. It was fast. Incredibly fast for a human without a movement quirk. But it wasn't superhero fast. Then came Izuku. He was paired with Bakugo for the second heat. Aizawa was cruel like that. Ready. Izuku crouched. Fire jetted from the soles of his shoes. Go! Izuku hovered just above the ground, a jet of propulsion blasting him forward. 4.01 seconds. He beat Katsuki by a second and a half. Nice run, Kaken! Izuku said, dusting himself off. You're really fast for, running normally. Katsuki didn't respond. He walked away, his fists clenched so hard his nails drew blood. Test 2, grip strength. Izuku gripped the device. 400 kilograms. He crushed the handle. Katsuki gripped the device. 70 kilograms. Above average for an adult male, but pathetic compared to the monsters in the class. Test 3, standing long jump. Aoyama used his naval laser to fly across the sandbox. Bakugo jumped. He cleared the sandbox, landing with a roll. Good. But not flying good. Test 4, repeated side steps. Mineta was the king here, bouncing off his balls. Katsuki was fast, his agility high. He scored well here. Finally, a glimmer of hope. But as the tests went on, the reality set in. Izuku was dominating. He was top 3 in almost everything. Todoroki, the ice guy, was consistently second. Momojayorozu was creating mechanical aids to score high. Katsuki was hovering in the bottom half. He was beating the non-combat quirks, Hagakure, Kota, but he was losing to the powerhouses. I'm going to be expelled. The thought was a cold dagger in his heart. All Might gave me this power. He chose me. And I'm going to lose it on the first day because I'm too weak to use it. Test 5, Ball Throw Part 2. It was Katsuki's turn again. Since he had flubbed the demonstration, Aizawa allowed him a redo for the official record, putting him last in the rotation. The scoreboard was invisible, but Katsuki knew the math. He needed a miracle. He needed a score that would offset his average performance in the other tests. He walked to the circle. Bakugo, Aizawa said. You have one chance. Don't waste my time. Katsuki looked at the ball. I can't hold back, he realized. If I hold back, I get 70 meters. If I get 70 meters, I go home. He looked at his right arm. The brace was tight. Screw the arm. If I break it, I break it. I can't lose here. I can't lose to him. He looked at Izuku, who was watching with wide, worried eyes. Don't look at me like that, Deku. Katsuki widened his stance. He gripped the ball. He closed his eyes and reached for the door. He didn't try to open it a crack. He kicked it down. One for all, 100%. The red lightning surged. His hair stood on end. The ground beneath him cracked under the pressure of the energy flooding his system. Dai-yi-yi! He swung his arm. He felt the bones begin to flex, ready to snap under the torque. Whoosh! The power vanished. Katsuki stumbled forward, the ball rolling out of his hand and flopping onto the grass. 3 meters. What? Katsuki looked at his hands. The lightning was gone. The heat was gone. He whipped around. Aizawa was standing there. His hair was floating, defying gravity. His scarf was floating. And his eyes, usually dark and bored, were glowing a piercing red. I erased your quirk, Aizawa said. Why? Katsuki roared. I was going to send it to the moon. You were going to send yourself to the hospital, Aizawa snapped. The capture scarf shot out, wrapping around Katsuki's torso and dragging him closer. I saw the medical reports from the entrance exam, Aizawa hissed. You shattered your arm and leg. You have zero control. A hero who renders himself useless after one attack is not a hero. He is a liability. I have to win. Katsuki choked out, struggling against the cloth. Is winning worth losing your arm permanently? Aizawa glared. You have the drive, Bakugo. I see that. But you are driving a car with no steering wheel at 300 miles per hour. If you use that power again the way you just tried to, I will expel you right now. I don't care about your potential if you're dead. Aizawa blinked. His hair fell. The redness faded from his eyes. I returned your quirk. He turned away. You have one more throw. Find a way to do it without destroying yourself. Be rational. Katsuki stood in the circle. His heart was hammering against his ribs. Rational. He looked at the ball. He looked at his arm. I can't use the whole arm. Too much surface area. Too much torque. He thought about the grenade designs in his notebook. The pin. The trigger mechanism. Concentrate the explosion. Don't let it fill the vessel. Just the tip. He picked up the ball. Not the arm. Not the shoulder. He moved into a pitching stance. He wound up. It looked like a normal throw. Wait for the last second. His arm moved forward. The ball left his palm. Now, he channeled the power. Not into his body, but to the very tip of his index finger. He flicked the ball with one for all at 100%, but only in that single digit. Smash! Crack! A sonic boom exploded from his fingertip. The ball rocketed into the sky, tearing through the clouds. A sharp, stinging pain shot through his finger. It was purple and swollen. Broken. But his arm was fine. Katsuki stood there, panting. He clutched his throbbing finger. He looked at Aizawa. Aizawa looked at the device. A small smile crept onto his face. 705.2 meters. He showed the screen to Katsuki. Better. Katsuki looked at the number. It wasn't infinity. It wasn't a god-tier score. But it was pro-hero level. He turned to the class. He locked eyes with Izuku. I'm still standing, Deku, Katsuki whispered. He did it! Kirishima cheered. Over 700 meters. That's insane, but his finger looks nasty, Uraraka winced. He minimized the damage, Ida observed, chopping his hand. He sacrificed a small part to achieve the maximum result. A tactical decision. Aizawa marked the score down. Alright. Moving on. The results. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the field. The class gathered around the holographic display. Okay, here are the rankings, Aizawa said. By the way, the expulsion thing was a lie. Huh? The class screamed. It was a logical ruse to draw out your maximum potential, Aizawa grinned. That was obvious, Yaoyorozu said with a sigh. I knew it from the start. I didn't. Mineta wept. I thought I was gonna die. Katsuki stared at the board. 1. Izuku Midoriya. 2. Shoto Todoroki. 3. Momo Yaoyorozu. 4. Katsuki Bakugo. 20. Minoru Mineta. 4th. He was 4th. He hadn't been expelled. But he wasn't first. Izuku was first. Of course, Katsuki felt a strange mix of relief and bitter disappointment. He had survived. But survival wasn't the goal. Dominance was. That wraps it up, Aizawa said, handing a slip of paper to Katsuki. Bakugo, go to the nurse and get that finger healed. The rest of you, there are curriculum sheets in the classroom. The confrontation. Katsuki walked out of the main building. His finger was bandaged, healed by Recovery Girl but still aching with a dull throb. He just wanted to go home and sleep for a week. Kaken. Katsuki stopped. He didn't turn around. Izuku was standing behind him near the school gates. The sunset framed him in orange light, making him look even more like the golden boy everyone thought he was. What? Katsuki asked. I saw the doctor's report, Izuku said. His voice wasn't condescending now. It was serious. Searching. When we were 4. I saw the X-ray. You have the extra toe joint. You're biologically quirkless. Katsuki turned slowly. So? Izuku took a step forward. That power today. It felt like All Might. The same pressure. The same kind of smash. Izuku's green eyes bored into Katsuki's. Did you lie? Izuku asked. All these years? Did you have a quirk and just hide it to make me feel, what? Bad for you? Or did you just manifest it now? Katsuki looked at his childhood friend. He could tell him. He could say, All Might chose me. He thinks I'm better suited for this than you. It would destroy Izuku. It would wipe that confident look off his face forever. But All Might had sworn him to secrecy. And more importantly, if he told Izuku the truth, it would sound like another handout. I didn't earn this power. I was given it. Katsuki refused to be seen as a charity case. I didn't lie, Katsuki said, his voice low and dangerous. Then how? I told you, didn't I? Katsuki interrupted. I'm going to beat you. I'm going to be number 1. He walked up to Izuku, getting right in his face. You think you know how the world works, Deku. You think you can analyze everything and put it in a notebook. But you don't know anything about me. Katsuki tapped his own chest. This power? I paid for it in blood. And I'm going to use it to crush you. He turned and walked away into the twilight. Wait! Izuku shouted. Kaken! I won't lose to you, Katsuki smirked. It wasn't a nice smile. Good, he whispered to the empty street. Make it interesting. The rivalry had shifted. It was no longer the god and the ant. It was the sun and the spark. And the spark was ready to start a fire.